The first night inside Adrian Vale's mansion did not feel like captivity in the way I had imagined captivity would feel, because there were no chains, no locked cuffs around my wrists, no visible guard standing at the door, and yet every inch of that glass-walled bedroom reminded me that I was exactly where he wanted me to be, monitored by security systems I could not see, surrounded by architecture designed to be beautiful and impenetrable at the same time. The kind of modern fortress that blended luxury with surveillance so seamlessly that you almost forgot you were being watched until you noticed the faint red blink of a sensor tucked into the ceiling corner. I did not sleep much that night, and when morning came it did not arrive gently, but instead filtered through automated blinds that adjusted themselves with programmed precision, revealing a skyline washed in pale gray light, a city I still could not identify, which unsettled me more than the kidnapping itself because it meant distance, planning, resources, and a level of influence that stretched far beyond what an ordinary man should possess. A notification sound broke the silence, not from my phone because that had never been returned to me, but from the tablet placed neatly on the desk, and when I approached it cautiously the screen, illuminated with a simple message that read breakfast downstairs, which felt almost absurd in its politeness considering the circumstances. And for several long seconds I stood there debating whether refusing would be an act of resistance or simply childish defiance, but hunger won because I had been unconscious for hours and fear burns energy faster than pride. The bedroom door unlocked with a soft mechanical click the moment I reached for it, confirming what I already suspected, that my movements were being tracked in real time. And as I stepped into the hallway I was met not with dark corridors, but with open space, sunlight reflecting off marble floors, abstract art mounted against clean white walls. The faint scent of expensive cologne lingering in the air, as though the house itself carried his presence even when he was not visible. The dining area overlooked a sunken living room with modular furniture arranged in deliberate minimalism, and beyond that stretched floor-to-ceiling windows revealing an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the skyline, the water perfectly still, and seated at the head of a long stone table was Adrian, dressed not in a suit this time, but in tailored black trousers and a fitted dark gray shirt with the sleeves rolled once at the forearms, revealing strong hands resting loosely near a sleek tablet and a cup of coffee that had likely gone untouched for several minutes. He did not look up immediately when I entered, and I realized then that power did not always announce itself with dominance, but sometimes with indifference, because making someone wait for acknowledgement shifts the balance without a single word being spoken. "Sit," he said calmly, eyes still on the screen. It was not a demand laced with aggression, but it was not optional either, and I took the chair opposite him, the distance between us measured but not excessive, enough that I could study him without appearing to do so, enough that I could notice the faint tension in his jaw and the subtle crease between his brows that suggested he had not slept either. A plate had already been arranged in front of the empty seat, warm food prepared with the kind of precision that suggested staff operating efficiently somewhere out of sight, and for a moment the normalcy of it all almost made me forget why I was there until he finally lifted his gaze and met mine directly. "You should eat," he said. "Voice even, you should let me go," I replied before I could stop myself. A pause settled between us, not explosive, not heated, but waited. "If I let you go," he said carefully, "you would not make it home. You don't know that." "I do." There was no arrogance in the statement, only certainty, and something about that unsettled me more than anger would have. "You said someone wanted me dead 3 years ago," I continued, forcing myself to stay steady. "Why wait until now?" "They did not wait," he said quietly, placing the tablet down at last, giving me his full attention, which felt heavier than any raised voice. "They assumed the problem had resolved itself, and the hospital closed the investigation, and you faded back into routine, but I reopened files that were never meant to be reopened. And you found me." "I found patterns," he corrected, leaning back slightly in his chair, eyes never leaving mine. "And your name was still connected to a missing shipment that was rerouted before reaching the emergency unit that night." My stomach tightened as memory sharpened, the chaos of that evening resurfacing in fragments, the frantic calls, the rerouting order that had come through internal communication, the way no one questioned it because the system rarely failed, and I had signed off because it had not been my place to override protocol. "I was following instructions," I said again, though this time it sounded less defensive and more hollow. "Yes," he replied, and for the first time there was something almost reflective in his tone. "And someone counted on that." Silence lingered, And I realized that this was not an interrogation in the traditional sense because he was not pressing me for confession. He was studying me, weighing reactions, measuring truth against instinct. And that unsettled me, a different way because it meant he was not blinded by rage the way I had initially assumed. "You don't actually believe I orchestrated your father's death?" I said slowly. He did not answer immediately, and in that hesitation, I saw conflict flicker, brief but undeniable. "If I believed that," he said finally, "you would not be sitting at this table." The calmness of it sent a chill through me because it was not a threat delivered for intimidation, but a statement of fact. And suddenly the reality of who he was settled deeper into my awareness, not just a grieving son, but a man capable of calculated violence without emotional display. Before I could respond, a sharp vibration echoed from somewhere in the house, not loud enough to cause panic but deliberate enough to command attention. And Adrian's expression shifted almost imperceptibly as he glanced toward the far wall, where a concealed panel slid open to reveal a large digital screen displaying security feeds from multiple angles around the property. Black SUVs positioned at entry points, men in tailored suits communicating through discreet earpieces, and beyond the gates, movement. "Stay here," he said, rising smoothly from his seat. "What's happening?" I demanded, standing as well despite myself. He hesitated for a fraction of a second before replying, "Curiosity." The word barely left his mouth before the distant sound of something sharp cracked through the air. Not thunder, not construction, but unmistakably a gunshot. And the stillness of the pool outside shattered as birds scattered from nearby rooftops, the illusion of peaceful luxury collapsing in seconds. Adrian moved with efficiency rather than chaos, tapping commands into the tablet he carried now, issuing instructions through a subtle in-ear device had not noticed earlier, his voice low and controlled, as though orchestrating a meeting rather than responding to an attack. "This is about you," he said suddenly, turning toward me. My heart pounded. "What?" "The moment I extracted you." They accelerated. Another crack echoed, closer this time, and the glass panels automatically shifted opacity, turning darker to obscure interior visibility, a security feature activating seamlessly. And I realized this house was built not only to impress, but to withstand. "You said someone wanted me dead 3 years ago," I whispered, the pieces clicking into place with terrifying clarity. "They never stopped wanting that." "No," he said quietly, stepping closer now, not in dominance, but in urgency. "They assumed you would eventually become inconvenient again." The floor beneath us vibrated faintly, something detonated at the outer perimeter, not strong enough to breach but strong enough to send a message. And in that moment the line between theory and reality dissolved completely because this was no longer about archived files or past decisions. It was present, immediate, and lethal. Adrian's hand wrapped around my wrist suddenly, firm but not painful, guiding me away from the open space toward a concealed door I had not noticed before. Biometric lock scanning his face before sliding open to reveal a reinforced interior corridor leading downward. And I followed without resisting because whatever this was, it was real. And the sound of coordinated gunfire outside confirmed that my existence had indeed triggered something far larger than I had ever understood. As we descended into a secured lower level, illuminated by cool lighting and lined with surveillance monitors displaying live feeds of armed men attempting to breach the outer gates, Adrian released my wrist only once the door sealed behind us, and for the first time since I had met him, I saw something crack through his composure. Not fear exactly, but recognition. "They were supposed to wait," he murmured, almost to himself. "For what?" I asked, breath uneven. "For you to resurface publicly." I stared at him. "I've done nothing." "You worked emergency response again last month," he said sharply, eyes locking onto mine. "You assisted a patient connected to my uncle's private operations." "I didn't know," I said, voice barely steady. "I know," he replied. And this time there was no accusation in it at all. A final explosion sounded above us. Heavier, closer, followed by the sharp echo of return fire from Adrian's men, and he stepped toward the monitor displaying the main entrance, where figures in dark tactical gear were retreating under defensive pressure. "They are not here to intimidate," he said quietly, more to himself than to me. "They are here to confirm whether you are alive." My blood ran cold. "And if they confirm it," I whispered. He turned slowly, meeting my gaze with a steadiness that felt almost intimate despite the chaos surrounding us. "Then the war that should have started 3 years ago," he said softly, "begins tonight." And for the first time since this nightmare began, I understood that I was no longer just a man taken from a parking lot, no longer just a nurse caught in paperwork and protocol, but a living piece of evidence in a power struggle that had been festering in silence for years. And as the gunfire echoed through reinforced walls and Adrian stepped closer again, placing himself subtly between me and the door as if by instinct rather than calculation, I realized something else that unsettled me even more than the violence outside. He was not protecting me out of guilt. He was protecting me because I mattered to the outcome. And in his world, outcomes were paid for in blood.